Morris, and you are about to embark on the next Pioneer Knowledge Services Because You Need to Know, a digital resource for you to listen to folks share their experience and knowledge around the field of knowledge management and nonprofit work. If your company or organization would like to help us continue this mission and sponsor one of our shows, email byntk@pioneer-ks.org. Everyone, we are going to listen to how a picture puzzle of action and innovation all came together to create something that I think you're going to find very interesting. First, we're going to go around the horn. We've got 3 guests today. We're going to talk to each one of them and figure out what exactly happened and what's going on and what's in the future for what you're about to find out about. Doug Smith, please, you're up first.
Hello, everyone. My name is Doug. I live in the beautiful Hudson Valley region of New York. And I'm delighted to be here with Edwin and the others because I've spent a lot of time in my life trying to help people figure out how to make their best future happen.
So you're a counselor or something? No.
I try to be a friend, just a friend and a colleague.
Okay. Joost?
Hello, Edwin, everyone. My name is Joost Visser. I am co-founder, CEO of Connects, which is a company based out of Brussels, Belgium, Europe. Delighted that we are partnering with Doug and Ed and the Strategic Doing Networks to help people collaborate and innovate, not only in a face-to-face setting, but also in what we call a hybrid setting. So both on and offline.
Thank you. All right, Ed Morrison, tell me what you got going on there.
I'm Ed Morrison, and Doug, I'm leading Strategic Doing Networks. I'm coming to you from Greenville, South Carolina, and I've spent most of my professional life trying to figure out how people collaborate when nobody can tell anybody else what to do. So that's what I've been focused on.
Have you guys seen that happens a lot?
Yeah, well, collaboration is a process, Edwin. It's a process of innovation. It's not a thing, it's not an event, and it's not a single skill, actually. It's a portfolio of skills, and we don't really teach those skills. That's where I focused, yeah.
Collaboration. Let's all define that. Doug, what's collaboration?
2 or more people working together towards some shared purpose.
Wow, that sounds pretty easy. Why is that so hard?
Well, one of the reasons...
Hold on. Let me just back up here, because we're not talking about operations by committee, right? So anybody that's worked in an academic framework understands that pain point, that when you got the more hands in the pie, it almost pulls back the activity to a bit. It loses some energy. How do you find a balance to that?
Let me jump in on that. I think part of the challenge, I'll define collaboration, first of all, in my mindset, is it's a creative process of recombinant innovation. In other words, creating things that no individual partner can do by themselves using the assets they already have. And it's a process among equal partners. That's part of the challenge, is that it requires, I think, and Doug can amplify this, but it does require us to develop new skills and behaviors to really be good at it.
Well, it's interesting because we're talking about the behaviors, and there's 2 points to this, is that one, you've got individual behaviors, then you've got group behavior. In a collaborative environment, you have, and this is me speaking here, you guys shoot it up, you have to have a expectation of behavior that everybody's going to play. There's got to be an engagement in kind of a rule set, or at least some general common themes that everybody's agreeing to, correct?
Definitely true. Yeah, you have to be very explicit about this. This has to be, you can't just jump into this assuming that everybody's got a shared purpose, or assuming that everybody's going to behave in ways that build trust and mutual respect. That's not necessarily the case in many, many situations. So you really have to be explicit in setting these things up.
Is that where most collaboration fails?
Well,
is they don't build the container first?
One place it does fail is, first of all, 2 things. First of all, most collaborations happen among people who are already busy. Secondly, there's a common, well-intentioned step that's taken that can get you into trouble, which is establishing those expectations, or what are often called norms. People will list out 12, 15, 20 things, and so they don't even give themselves a chance to sort of repeatedly practice one or two things.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, which is that collaborations emerge out of a set of simple rules rather than complex rules. And so part of this is flattening the hierarchical structures that usually come into a room. You've got power differentials that are playing out here, and you've got default behavior. You've got habits that people have in terms of how they interact in a group. And oftentimes those habits are dysfunctional. You know, those are the things that really undercut a collaboration.
So is it a key ingredient that you have to have a leader?
I believe you do. But the key here is at the beginning of a collaboration, it's useful to have a leader, especially if the leader knows only the team can succeed or fail, not any single person. And the leader is committed to, over time, building shared leadership.
I would put it a little bit differently. I would say that I like the term guide instead of leader, simply because in a collaboration, you're kind of on a path, you're on a journey here. And so you do need a guide. The emergence of distributed leadership is really a key element of collaboration. You start to see, a distributed power within that group and an equal sharing.
I'd like to add another perspective on collaboration is that 1 + 1 = 3 or 5 or 11, as opposed to individuals working together in a team. The added value, the synergies that are created by trusting each other, by sharing assets, is a very important aspect for collaboration in my point of view.
So everything you guys are talking about sounds pretty easy in the idea that creating a shared understanding of why we're here and what we're doing sounds pretty easy, but in historical perspective of my own experience, that's not very common. When you walk into an organization or a team, that anybody tells you that.
I'm going to challenge you on that. It's simple. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. And that's because it requires new behaviors and skills.
Yeah.
And this is not easy. New habits are not easy to form. It takes perseverance, it takes focus, it takes discipline. And when you're in a group of 6, 7, 8 people in a team, same problem, same challenge. You've got to build a shared discipline, and this is critical.
Yeah, let me, if I could, Edwin, just to add to that. You see, one of the reasons it's difficult is that in certain contexts and with respect to certain purposes and goals, actually hierarchy is better than collaboration. That's to be really clear. Edwin, if you were to fall and need stitches and you went to the emergency room and you got an intern and there's an attending resident there, you kind of want the resident to be telling the intern exactly what to do. So just right. So the part of the complexity in this is knowing when the kind of collaboration we're talking about is needed in order to succeed at purposes and goals and stuff, versus when it's not needed. Because if it's not needed and then we all get together and try to make each other feel good and everything, it's a disaster. It's a waste of time.
Let me prompt Doug, because he's got a really clever way to assess when it's needed and when it's not needed. So Doug, keep going a little bit further.
Sure. Yeah. The beauty of collaboration and when it's needed, we have a group of people who confront something that has parts to it they don't know how to do. Again, if everybody knows how to do what each individual needs to do, then why not have hierarchy? Why not have a boss, a leader, a guide? Again, any of that is fine. Yeah. Just saying, you do this, you do this, you do this. You already know how to do it. Come on, gang. That doesn't mean you don't have good conversation, try to help one another, but that's way different than a situation where, let's say, the four of us face something that we don't fully know how to do. My goodness, we better figure it out together, at least those parts that we don't know.
There's got to be a piece missing in order to create the reason why we're collaborating. So the puzzle piece is missing for some reason. And if it's a knowledge or skill or attribute, that's one thing. But if it's a mechanical piece, if it's an external thing, that's still, it requires a collaborative effort to try to figure out what's missing.
I'll go even further than that, because increasingly we're confronting problems that are intertwined. You really can't pull them apart. And you can think of everything from trying to solve a complex problem that requires collaboration with your partners to everything to climate change and things like that. So there's a set of really challenging problems that we're confronting that we can't use our traditional approach to solve. We have to experiment. We have to figure out, how do we get better results in our current situation? How do we solve this? How do we generate a solution to this? Because there are many, many different solutions. That creates two dimensions here of problems and the complexity. And going back to your question, one is that the problem itself can't untangle it. It's not easily untangled. You just have to experiment and figure out how we can get better results. The second is you got to work with people to do that. So the collaboration itself is complex. So you're managing two dimensions of complexity all at once, and you can easily get distracted and easily default back to old behaviors and all of that. That's why it's not easy. It sounds simple, but it's not easy.
So I've got two questions for everybody at the table. Is collaboration equal to marriage? That's a good who's going to step into that pie?
No, I think that there's, to have a successful marriage, I think, the skill set that you need for good collaboration is an absolute necessity. You need to be able to listen, you need to give and take, you need to share your assets. If it's a hierarchical marriage is more like a kind of bondage. There's lots of similarities.
There definitely are. And Edwin, I'm going to do something here that I'll try to explain for the wonderful listeners out there.
Okay.
But it's another aspect of marriage or relationships that your question really is crucial to. We have friends, or we've experienced ourselves, etc. We know of other people who have difficult relationships. Often the term is dysfunctional relationships. And so in marriage, there's a whole group of people out there called marriage counselors. One of the things that they do, and they do well, and they try to do, is they try to get people to sort of talk to one another, listen to one another.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, what's really going on is they're trying to reset the way the relationship is supposed to work. So right now, for all the listeners out there, I have a rubber band on two thumbs, and I'm stretching the rubber band. And that's what happens in a marriage counseling relationship. They set some new guides, like those simple rules and things like that. In a very fraught, difficult, dysfunctional relationship, the couple leave the marriage counselor, and within 24 hours or 48 hours, one of them makes a mistake, does something that is reflective, and the rubber band just snaps back. So I think people can learn from this by giving some slack to others as they maybe make a mistake with some of those simple rules and not immediately jump on them. The other thing I would say is the kind of collaborations that we're talking about are not marriage. This is not a lifelong commitment to another person, which is a very, very, very rich and deep and wonderful experience, but a difficult one. We're talking about trying to get something done in our busy lives that can make a difference, that leads to an innovation.
Well, I'm going to amp off of what Doug just said and talk about how do we actually do that? Well, we do that through our conversations. And so dysfunctional relationships, you can characterize dysfunctional relationships by the pattern of conversation that they've designed and guided. And some of it's just reflexive. You react, you get angry.
Or lack of conversation.
Or lack of conversation.
Sitting opposite each other.
Or misinterpretation, right?
Or just repeating the same old conversations. Oh, we can never do that. Oh, that's impossible. Oh, that person won't ever listen.
Right. So the conversation, one of the things we've learned in years of doing this is that collaborations emerge from conversations with a very predictable structure to them. If you understand that structure, you can improve your skills at building collaboration, but it requires practice. It's like learning to swim or learning to play the violin or whatever.
The learning aspect, you keep going back to, I hear listening, learning, that requires an inquisitive mind and a lifelong learner mindset.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So do we just hire those folks? Do you just not hire the folks that won't play or won't learn, or they're like, yep, I know enough, I'm good? How do you weed out those folks that are not participating well?
Quick story. Many years ago, I worked with the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, a wonderful guy, good friend. When we started working together, he really believed that the only way that his company could succeed is if he had extraordinary people. And I used to say, Steve, you have about 1,000 people working for you. Can you help me understand how all 1,000 of them are going to be extraordinary? So we started changing our conversation to getting extraordinary contributions out of ordinary people. And by ordinary, this was not a condemnation.
Yeah, no.
Most of us are ordinary. So please, that's not what I meant. But I did mean the other thing, which is it was an illusion that you could just have all extraordinary people. You know, the famous Lake Wobegon series, all of the people in that part of Minnesota were extraordinary.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge here is to understand that everybody has gifts, and a lot of the behaviors that our organizations and communities have engendered tends to shut down people, tends to shut down those conversations, tends to shut down those situations where we can share our gifts. I prefer to think about this as learned behavior. Yep. This is learned behavior, and we need if in this world of networks and complex problems, we need a new set of behaviors. And we need to help each other build these habits together. One of the things we've learned about collaboration is there's a variety of skills to it, and nobody's good at all of them. Nobody's good at all of them. So you need a team to really be good.
And Edwin, that just reminds me of another trap.
Hold on, Doug.
Okay.
Joost was going to jump in.
I wanted to bring in the cultural dimension of collaboration, how some cultures, let's say, foster collaboration a lot more than others. And what's interesting is this is something I learned recently, that Ed and Doug, they became friends, colleagues in the same studies, which sub-Saharan African studies, which I think from a sort of cultural point of view, collaborative point of view, it's quite striking that you ended up on the same path and with that kind of dimension.
That's an interesting point.
Well, when I taught high school in West Africa when I was 20 years old, one of the things I quickly learned in the culture was the word participate. So for example, if you were hitching a ride in a Land Rover, as you went down the road toward the capital, it was about a 150-mile drive, there would be people asking to get a ride. And every time somebody came in, it was participate, which means move over and make room. So oftentimes, by the time I got down to the coast, I had about 1 square centimeter to sit on. And that was all about the culture of participate, which was very, very meaningful to me and has influenced my work.
That whole civil structure, that social construct, doesn't seem to be reflected well in a capitalistic mindset.
A capitalistic mindset as we've come to know it in the last 30 or 40 years, that's true. But, this whole notion of the individual being supreme really is misplaced in many ways. And I fault the economists among us, my colleagues who are economists, because they've given us a very narrow view of what a market economy should look like. Part of the challenge, I think, in understanding this is that we can design market economies differently. To tie together what the point I'm making now and with Joost, an African-American entrepreneurial ecosystem operates differently than a predominantly white ecosystem. This is an important insight, is that because there are communal values in the African-American community that come into play that oftentimes we tend to, in predominant white community, we tend to focus on the sole entrepreneur, the hero, In fact, no entrepreneur has been successful without a team and without support and without a government, what I call a civic economy that supports the market economy. And so this is an important distinction.
That kind of sits opposite of what most media represents in the hero complex of the Lone Ranger or, all those icons out there that are, it's just me.
That's right.
I'm doing I'm Rambo. I'm going to fix everything. I'm going to whatever.
But that's part of the culture. Right? It's the lone hero, the one that we aspire to to be, and that is going to fix all our problems. That's the myth.
It's a myth of entrepreneurship. I mean, we've seen the myth of entrepreneurship, unfortunately, have disastrous results with the Titan implosion. It's the notion that an individual can strip away all government regulation and be innovative. That's not really the case in this country. Many of our innovations, including internet, GPS, all of that, has come from a collaboration between government and the private sector. So it's a much more complex story than we want to share in the public media or the.
Talking about innovation and entrepreneurship, because everyone always speaks about startups, scale-ups, and then coming really, really big, and speaking about the funding challenge. But it's not only about access to funding. It's very often innovative companies fail because the lone entrepreneur that starts the company actually lacks the skills and capabilities to take it to the next level and doesn't have the mindset to understand that this is a collaborative effort, it's a team effort, and therefore fails.
Sometimes it's that ego and control mechanism that says I have to do everything because it's my baby, versus being able to distribute leadership. Let's wrap this up in a different direction. So in the world of knowledge management, we work with three main functions: people, process, and technology. Now, of the people, process, and technology bucket, what brings you three cats together?
Well, I would argue that all three of them do. Part of what we've been doing is understanding that Doug's work over the last 30, 40 years aligns very closely with my work over the last 30, 40 years. But in order to share what we have in terms of what we've learned in terms of people and process, we do need to leverage technology. We do need to create peer-to-peer groups that are learning from each other, because this is a continuous process of adaptation. And so that's, I think, what's brought all three of us together is this exciting moment of time.
Edwin, just to underscore what Ed just said, it's important for everybody to remember all systems are socio-technical. Even if, Edwin, you're a coder who codes code that then is coding, it's still socio-technical. You did the original code. By the way, an explosive realization over the last 3 to 5 years in machine learning and artificial intelligence. Increasingly, the scientists and the coders involved, many of whom probably did not have a liberal arts education, that's not a criticism, it's an observation, have come to say, well, wait a second, where do human beings fit into this?
Well, you look at just digital transformation.
Hold on. Let me bring the Techna guy in here, Mr. Technology.
Well, one of my favorite phrases, it's not about the technology, it's about people. And it's exactly what Doug was saying, is that technology is designed by a person with a certain functionality in mind. And if you have no understanding of the concept of collaboration, how are you going to design a collaboration platform? This is what Ed has mentioned many times before. The Connects platform was not just a group of tech guys getting together and let's design a collaboration platform. Our founding partners were people with a private sector background, public sector background, of course also the tech. You need to have the tech capabilities. If we were to create this thing, what would it look like based on our understanding of collaboration, our needs as leaders of different networks, and therefore it's a very, very different approach, and it led to a different outcome than having a more one-sided view on it. And this is the whole point about collaboration. If you are designing something in tech, you need to make sure that you have, diverse group of people that can help you co-design it.
Edwin, just to tie that back to your original question about knowledge management, from the very beginning of talk about knowledge management, which goes back to the late 80s, early 90s, the kind of picture that people mostly talked about was this thing where you'd be able to go into some system and get the perfect answer to whatever question that you had. And it turns out, of course, that if you're actually up against something that does require collaboration, up against trying to figure out things that you don't know how to do, as we talked about before, you can't design and implement such a system because language is ambiguous. And unless you have some other people to help you understand the words, the language of what you've capped out of the knowledge management system, you're not going to know what to do with them.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to focus on that a little bit, because knowledge itself is knowledge to do what? To act, to change, to do something with.
Ideally.
And ideally, right, but to change our situation, get better results, better solutions. And knowledge, that kind of knowledge, a large part of it is hidden. It's tacit knowledge. It's not brought forth by people until you have a context, until you have a challenge, until you have what we call a framing question, or Doug would call a challenge. then tacit knowledge becomes more explicit. People say, oh, yeah, I know this guy that might be able to help us, or I have this asset that might be able to.
Those are tentacles of contextual connection, right? Those are things that are ways to connect and understand, comprehension, awareness, all those things that create awareness in a human framework has to be there for that to even make the dot connection, and to say, hey, did you know about X over here? Joe's got this and that. But that requires participation. It goes all back to you're going to participate or you're not. And that to me goes back to the question I asked about how do you hire for that. I think if organizations got more critical in letting people go that don't participate, we'd all be better.
I would say not before they've given them every opportunity to participate. But yes, I understand that when you do have a person, as wonderful a human being as they are, who is a true loner or whatever, that can have consequences, and it's important to recognize those consequences. As Ed said, everybody has something to offer in most contexts, and it's the job of all of us to try to tease that out within limits. So Edwin, I don't disagree.
I'm going to share an insight that I had with one of my mentors, a guy named David Morgenthaler, who was a big venture capitalist. David's gone now, but he shared with me, I talked about this, learned behavior versus, okay, this is a defective person. I mean, there's children of the lie, just cannot tell the truth. That's a very small percentage of the population. Rather than try to weed people out, the question is, with new hires, how do we onboard these people? How do we create the environment, the learning expectation that you're going to be a full contributor and that you're going to learn and share your learning? Because that's the onboarding process that would have higher leverage than trying to weed out people who don't participate.
And most organizations understand that front end, the front gate that brings people in, is the most critical as far as I think that engaged in participant of the organization. But to me, 98% of the organizations I've been through don't do that well.
Yeah, I agree. And they don't, in my experience, they don't teach people the expectations around collaboration. What kinds of behavior do we expect here? Instead, here are the forms that you need to fill out. Here are the process.
Here, sign this. Here's a 3-ring binder on our safety stuff, blah, blah, blah. Go work.
It's a huge responsibility for the organization in terms of their hiring processes and talent acquisition, and recognizing the importance of cognitive diversity. If you only recruit people that are exactly like you, you will not get the best outcomes. That's one aspect, but also the example that Doug was giving. This may be people that are, cognitively diverse or even neurodiverse. So you need to understand that if they are quiet, it's maybe not because they're not motivated, but because that's their most comfortable state of being. As an organization, you have the responsibility to understand where people sit and what the diversity is for your own benefit. Because if you do that well, you will get much better results.
I'm going to go around to each one of you. You're going to put your individual hat on, your anti-collaboration hat, and you're going to say, why are you in this discussion? What do you bring into this, and what's the future? Meaning, what's your piece of this puzzle as you as an individual? And don't get all tied into the collaborative strings. Just why are you here and what are you doing? Doug, you're up.
I'm here because I was lucky enough to reconnect with Ed, and I just have a great deal of confidence that I can learn a ton from him and Joost and others, and that together we can really help people find their best future and make it happen.
Well, that sounds like a great purpose to be on the planet. Thank you. Joost?
I think similar to Doug, I'm deeply appreciative of the fact that we came together with these complementary skills and sets of experiences with a common purpose, common vision. It's exceptional, and I'm I'm very, very happy that this happened. So, and I'm really looking forward to the next couple of years working together.
Thank you, Joost. Ed?
Well, I'm here because, again, I met both Joost and Doug in the past year, and it's been a remarkable collaboration that's emerged out of that interactions. But the primary reason I'm here, I think, is because the next generation of leadership is going to need these skills. And it's no longer about a theory of change. It's a practice of change. Both Doug and I have demonstrated it's possible to transform systems. It's possible to transform organizations at a large scale. And I think both Doug and I feel an obligation to distill and share what we've learned working in the swampy lowlands of these real world problems.
Well, thank you all. I want to ask who here is brave enough to give me the definition they have in their head of what knowledge management is. Anybody?
I would define it as both the use and the creation of knowledge that makes a difference.
I would call it generation and distribution of knowledge that helps us generate solutions to these complex problems.
Joost?
I would say the ability to turn knowledge into wisdom. And if you manage knowledge well, it will lead to wisdom.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here today. It's been a blast. We want to have you back probably next spring to see where this is all at. All right, this is our benchmark. We're going to set the expectation, and then we're going to check in a year or so and see what's shaking. Yeah?
Sounds great.
Doug, say goodbye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Just finished our latest Because You Need to Know, a public service of Pioneer Knowledge Services. Please join us on LinkedIn and find us at pioneer-ks.org. If your company or organization would like to help us continue this mission and sponsor one of our shows, email byntk@pioneer-ks.org.